We all talk about it, and a lot of times we'll say, "Do you remember, that situation? You remember this situation?" And again, it's all somebody brings it up because it's still manifesting in your mind and or marinating in your head a little bit. And sometimes everybody chimes in and we talk about it, and then you feel better, and then you move on, to whatever next situation in your life's going to bring. I could think of all the incidents in my life that are still etched in my mind, but and as sad as they were, like a baby, that's a particularly tough one. Like we had Sid's death, and he was a baby, and it's almost like it just was unnatural because it's so young. It didn't even have a chance to experience life, and you're looking at the parents crying. I think that's the worst when you see parents come to the scene of an accident where somebody's really hurt badly or deceased. I think that was worse for me, at least, than the actual death of a victim. And but it's the talking, I think, that really helps us get through it. And there are people I know that don't talk to anyone, and it stays in their mind. And I think those are the ones that experience long-term traumatic stress or suicidal thoughts because they can't deal with it anymore. They've seen it so many times. I mean, I think that's what's tough in this business. We're seeing people that are having bad days. They don't have to always die. They can have their basements flooded, and that's their whole world, and they don't the insurance may not cover it because it's not a pipe that broke, it's flooding, or they have a fire that they've lost just about everything, and they can't go back to it. And the one on Dumbarton, that individual is in a nursing home now, and that was his world. That house. I mean, everything he owned was in it. The most valuable things he had were in there, and they were destroyed, and a lot of the members were destroyed. He was in his 90s, and it really affects, that affects you because you're watching these people have radical changes in their lives, and just difficult to deal with. I remember one accident on Route 32 in Bender. There was these two mothers in the front seat. Their two children were behind them. One was an infant, and one was about 13 years old, and she got T-boned by a truck. Both the mothers were deceased when we got there, and it was a pretty horrific scene. The baby was perfect. I mean, it was in a car seat, uninjured, untouched almost. The 13-year-old like a broken ankle, and I remember she asked me, we were getting her out, we had to push the front seat up, and she said, "How's my mommy?" And I didn't want to be the one to tell her, her mom was dead, and I said, "Well, we're going to take care of you first, and we're going to get you out." And but I couldn't stop thinking of those words, because I had at that time I have two daughters, and I think one of them was 14, almost the exact same age, and I kept. As I got older, I started to realize, it affected me more because you think of your own children, your own family, and your own mortality. And I just remember how I kept trying to imagine what life was going to be like for her after that day. And, after that whole event happened, she was taken to the hospital, stuck in an ambulance, and, both the parents, we waited for the coroner to come, and it was pretty rough. And I think, especially when you start off as a young person, things don't seem to bother you as much because first of all, you feel like you can take on anything. And if you don't have children of your own, I think, and you don't have, and you're not taking care of older people, it doesn't seem to affect you. So you can kind of get through that, and especially if you don't know the person. But as you get older, I remember a rollover on 9W. I remember this car flipped, and we had to get him out of the car, and he was pretty beat up. The airbag went off. His face got cut up, and his glasses broke, and from the airbag. And I remember thinking of my own parents at that point. I remember thinking of my uncle, who was about that age, and his pills were on the upside down. Everything was like on the roof of the car because it was still upside down when we got there. And I'm on my belly. We're working, taking him out. And he was really shook up and scared, and he didn't know where he was. He was disoriented. I think he had a medical event. But he wanted his pills. He kept looking for his pills. And it didn't mean as much. I mean, I started to realize, it didn't mean as much about pills because I wasn't taking any pills, and I'm thinking, hey, we'll find your pills, don't worry about it. But, as you get older and you start taking pills yourself, you're like, you need those pills, and I'm thinking now I get what this guy, but it's hard to forget that. You think about that, and I remember, when my kids just started driving, every time there was a motor vehicle accident, we didn't get all the details, but I couldn't. I always like to sit facing the direction we're moving, so I can see ahead and kind of size it up in my head. I knew what tools to take. I'm listening to the radio, but I'm also, if I see something at the scene, I'll know if I need an extinguisher or what tools I need. And I couldn't look whenever there was a motor vehicle accident. My kids were out. This is before we had cell phones, and I remember asking the guys as we're getting closer, "Can you see the car?" And they're like, "Yeah, yeah, yeah." I said, "What color is it?" And if it wasn't the right color, then I would be fine, and I could deal with it. But if it was the right color, and then they said if it was a Jeep, I'd think, "Oh no, that's my daughter. It's probably her. She's a new driver." And I didn't know how I'd react, and I knew that would really bother me. But I was okay if it wasn't somebody I knew. But I play Santa Claus. This was awful last year. Actually, it'll be 2 years ago this Christmas, for a neighborhood. And we were about to go to the neighborhood. I was all dressed up, ready to go. We got an echo response. And it was right next door to where we were going. We were going to have music on the truck, lights, and, but all the neighborhood comes to this one house. And this lady had taken too many pills. And so we all went to the echo response, even in my Santa suit, and we're trying to help, and I'm listening to the daughter crying and the son crying because it's their mother, and the husband doesn't know what to do. He's just pacing around upstairs. The paramedics are upstairs. We did what we could at that point. Once the paramedics came, we back off and let them, because they have more equipment than we obviously do. We have defibrillators and so on, but we help bring the person downstairs and get him into the ambulance. But even though it was too late, but what stuck in my mind was this a couple days before Christmas. The daughter was home from college. The son was home from college. The husband was walking around trying to console his daughter, who was, hysterical at that point, understandably hysterical. That's what sticks in your mind, because you imagine their life, what their life is going to be like now, and you see it. You see the mother coming downstairs. You're covering people with sheets, and I think that's the toughest. That's the toughest part of the job. But then we talk about it. And I still had to be Santa that night. So, and we tried not to let the kids know, because we didn't want them, because all the neighborhood kids were seeing, they thought it was us coming with trucks, but there was more police cars and ambulances and red lights, and we toned it down. We didn't put the music blaring on the truck that we had with our generators and things, but you don't forget things like that, but you also realize we still have a job to do. We have a mission to do, and we get each other. Our faith and our family and our friends get us through it, and I think that's why. I've been very fortunate. I've never had any thoughts, to hurt myself, or of depression or anything like that, because I still believe what I do. I still believe, what our mission here, and we're trying to help people that are having a bad day. So I think that's what gets me through it. Plus, all these guys are, terrific. They really are. We may have our differences of opinion on certain things, but when we have a job to do, it's amazing how we come together. Our lives depend on each other. We don't go anywhere, and if one of us runs out of air, or one of us feels nervous or scared, we both leave. Nobody goes in and out alone and leaves anybody, and we'd put our own lives at risk, to make sure we got, both of us out, if we're ever in a tough situation, and that's just the way. I guess that's just the way, we deal with it. And I would encourage everybody to make sure you do not keep something in that's bothering you, because those pictures won't get out of your head. They never do. I can remember, like I say, I remember them all.